Yes, we're streaming. Oh my god! I want a whole hard song. Here's the bike!
New York City. Here again, George Stephanopoulos. It is 10:30 and the East Coast polls have closed in 44 states, and it is a close race so far. Joe Biden has won 10 states, 93 electoral votes. Donald Trump has won 12 states, 83 electoral votes. Not a surprise yet. Right now, that is a rerun of the 2016 map. We can add 2 more states right now, though. Joe Biden's going to win the state of New Hampshire, and it's 4 electoral votes. Donald Trump has fought pretty hard. They thought that was one of those states they might be able to take back in 2020, but it was not to be. Joe Biden will win the state of New Hampshire, and it's 4 electoral votes, but Donald Trump will hold on to Louisiana, and it's 8 electoral votes. No surprise there. Blue state stays blue, red state stays red. So let's take another look at those key states up in the northern tier of the country. Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania, the so-called blue wall. Right now, that's where things stand. Michigan with 33% of the vote in, Donald Trump has a lead. Wisconsin, 35% of the vote in, Donald Trump has a lead. Pennsylvania, 31% of the vote in, Donald Trump has a lead. John Carl, the question there is that a red mirage or is something different happening here?
I mean, in all of these states, first of all, they're going to take time to get final results. All of these states are states that do not process mail-in vote as it comes in, which is the opposite of what we see in Arizona, the opposite of what we see in Florida. So we always knew there was going to be a bit of a red mirage factor here. As they open up those ballots, as they process that, those are going to be more Democratic votes. Those numbers will change. The question is, how much will they change?
Okay, that's an important point right there. I want to come to Pennsylvania in a minute, but right now we're just getting some results in from the state of Nebraska, and Donald Trump has won not all of the votes votes yet in the state of Nebraska, but he has won 3 of the 5 votes in the state of Nebraska. That's the overall state vote in Nebraska, one of those states that splits their electoral votes also among congressional districts. Tom Yamas, why don't you explain that?
Yeah, okay, so let's take a look at Nebraska right now and follow along with us because it gets a little complicated. As George mentioned, Nebraska splits its electoral votes. Here's the beautiful state of Nebraska right here. We're going to show you 2 counties right here. This is Sarpy, a conservative county that makes up the 2nd congressional district. Donald Trump should be on top right now, and he's not. He won this county 4 years ago, and that's good news for Joe Biden because just above this is Douglas County, and it's like the numbers are reversed here, George. Hillary Clinton won this 4 years ago. This is Omaha right here, right? And Democrats usually always win this area, even though Trump pulled off the win in the congressional district 4 years ago. It was because of that other county. The numbers are inverted right now. Still very, very close here. To give you an idea of the size of this county, it's essentially like this. It is minuscule, but if the race were to come down, and I don't want to say it, but you know what it is, if it were to come down to 269, whoever won that one county, that tiny little county, Nebraska, those would be the most important Americans right now on the planet.
Yeah, that turns into 270, 268. We also have...
Something I want to say right now. I can't believe it right now. Hello? Can you hear me now?
You should have their number.
I have their emails.
We do have another state to call right now. The state of Utah is going to go to Donald Trump. Again, not much of a surprise right there. Donald Trump is going to win the state of Utah and its 6th electoral votes. Even though that's the home of Mitt Romney, of course, is the only Republican senator voted to convict Donald Trump in the impeachment trial. Let's go back now to the state of Pennsylvania. David Muir, you had some exit polls from Pennsylvania.
Yeah, it's really interesting. This is to pick up what John Carl was saying, is that these blue wall states are going to take days possibly for us to find out who actually won these states. Secretary of State in Pennsylvania warned us in the last couple of days that it could take till the end of the week until we know Pennsylvania. But there's some numbers here that I would think the Biden people would be very happy with. When you take a look at suburban voters in Pennsylvania, Donald Trump is small as their core is 2 points ahead of Biden. But when you remember that he was 8 points ahead in the final tally over Hillary Clinton, 2 points is an improvement for Joe Biden. And you can see where he got the improvement from. When you break it down, Donald Trump still has overwhelmingly done well with men in the suburbs, but look at this among women. This is where the gender gap presents itself in Pennsylvania, at least. We've seen this in other states too coming in. 53% of suburban women going with Joe Biden. One other thing that was really interesting is the independent vote coming in from Pennsylvania. According to the exit polls, obviously, these are all still preliminary. 53% of independents are going with Joe Biden. That's a flip from 4 years ago. 4 years ago, Donald Trump won independents in Pennsylvania 48 to 41. Now Biden ahead by, what is that, almost 10 points.
According to the exit polls, we'll see if it holds up as the real results come in right now. We're going to take another look at the state of Minnesota as well. Again, that was a state that President Trump had hoped he might be able to flip, like the state of New Hampshire. Right now, 36% of the expected vote is in. It appears that Joe Biden has a big lead. Let's go back to Alex Perez in Minnesota.
Yeah, George, and what we're seeing is that Joe Biden has a huge lead in Hennepin County, the most populous county here in Minnesota. We're seeing 93% of the vote coming in from Hennepin County, about 70% of that vote right now going to Joe Biden. Those are the kinds of numbers that Democrats want to see here in Minnesota. You know, Obama, there were 19 counties that Obama won that Hillary lost to Trump back in 2016, and the Democrats are hoping they're going to be able to win back those so-called pivot counties. Now, the important vote, the rural areas, the Iron Range, the other part of the state, we still don't know the exact numbers from that area. That part of the state typically looks better for Republicans, typically went for Trump, so we will have to wait a little bit later in the evening to figure out those numbers. But right now, Hennepin County, Ramsey County, the populous areas of this state looking good for the Biden campaign. George.
Alex Perez, thanks very much. Let's take another look at North Carolina right now. We've got the state of North Carolina with 89% of the expected vote in. It's a very close race right now. Donald Trump at 50, Joe Biden at 49. Tom Yamas.
Yes, we have just one county that we have no data on right now in North Carolina. The race is very, very close. We're looking at a spread of about 40,000 votes. This is Granville County right here. This is a swing county. President Trump won it back for Republicans 4 years ago. There's about 15,000 votes for Republicans, 15 to 20,000 votes. That could affect the score. I mean, this is such a close race. This was a state that President Trump outright won 4 years ago, and yet right now it's a nail-biter. A lot of the swing counties, President Trump has been able to hold on, especially seeing Republicans, hopefully to drive out some voters there later on in the year. That didn't happen because of COVID. Joe Biden's doing exactly what he has to do here. He's driving up the votes. So to win in North Carolina for Joe Biden, he's going to have to do that there and in Wake County as well. We're still waiting for someone to vote in there, but you can see Joe Biden is building on that Hillary Clinton lead in those counties. If he can keep doing that, there might still be enough vote out there, but President Trump right now on top of about 40,000 votes.
Byron Pitts, what are you hearing in Raleigh?
Well, George, I can tell you that at this point, the Democrats in the state are getting nervous. The expectation was that they knew they would have an early lead. They thought it would be big enough that they could hold off a Republican surge. They were looking for a double-digit lead. When the numbers came out, it was only 9 points. And since that time, steadily as each half hour has passed, you've seen the President Trump gain ground, and eventually he's taken the lead.
You can see the camera.
And the sense is that the Democrats may be running out of time. And George, it's still early, right? I mean, North Carolina could go either way, but at this point, one of the things that we can see is that hard work can outwork money. In this state, for instance, in the Senate race, the Democrat outspent the Republican 2-1. And in TV advertising, the Trump campaign spent in TV and radio ads. The Trump and the RNC spent $41 million. Biden and the DNC spent $56 million. And that cash difference at this point doesn't seem to be a sufficient difference for the Democrats in a state in which they felt good going into the night, that they might have a comfortable lead that they could hold on to. But to this point, the Republican strategy to start close and then finish strong seems to be the direction that we're going in, George.
Byron Pitts, thanks very much. We have another call to make another projection to make in the state of Kansas. Donald Trump is going to win the state of Kansas. Again, that's a strong red state, and it's always been 6 electoral votes. He won by 21 points back in 2016. Donald Trump will win again. We're bringing Senator Chris Coons now, Senator of Delaware, close friend and advisor to Joe Biden. It looks like we're in for a very long night, Senator Coons, maybe even several days for this to go on. Is this really going as you expected tonight?
Well, George, we had a record early turnout. 100 million Americans voted early, whether in person or by mail. And as we're hearing from all over the country, we had record turnout in many states. So I'm optimistic. When there's record turnout, often that means Democrats win. And I'm hopeful that Joe still has several paths to 270 towards being our next president. I think his message all along that he and Kamala Harris can bring our country together, can move us out of this deadly pandemic and the mess that Donald Trump's bungled mishandling of the pandemic has gotten us into, has connected with voters and moved people to the polls. I've been checking in with local elected officials, colleagues in the Senate, the labor leaders in the states, and I'm still optimistic about a number of key states that haven't come in yet.
But so, I mean, let's talk about that a little bit more. You say he still has several paths. It looks like Donald Trump, we have not projected yet, but is on track in Florida towards a win. That was a must-win for him. Are we really heading back to the point where Joe Biden has to win all those 3 key blue wall states, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania? We're still holding out hope also in Arizona?
Arizona, I'm optimistic about, given what I'm hearing from a number of elected officials and local organizers there. And I think that means there's several different paths. It doesn't all come down to Pennsylvania. But I will remind you, George, part of why Joe is a great candidate from the outset is he's someone who was born and raised in Scranton, Pennsylvania, and Claymont, Delaware, has always been close to the people of Pennsylvania, and I think has run a terrific race in Pennsylvania, as well as in Michigan and Wisconsin and Arizona. Those are states I'm optimistic about this evening.
Senator Coons, you still think we're going to hear from Vice President Biden tonight?
I'm hopeful, but not certain. You know, I think we need to remember that elections aren't called on election night. They may get projections from the news, but in the end, elections in the United States are decided by states and counties, and it's often days after election night when all the votes are counted. And given that we had 100 million cast early by mail and in person, we need to make sure every vote is counted before we ultimately reach a decision about this election.
An important reminder, no question about that. Senator Coons, thanks very much for your time tonight. I want to go back to Cecilia Vega at the White House. What more are you picking up now, Cecilia, about whether or not President Trump will speak?
Actually, we just asked an aide when the president will speak, and we were told that they didn't know. We are sort of relying on what Kellyanne Conway told you at the beginning of the evening, that he will, in fact, address the nation at some point. I gotta say, I've seen some photos from some
Test,
photographers
test.
colleagues in the White House who were in the room where the president's supporters are gathering in the East Room of the White House, and it looks very much like it is a room where he will speak. There's a podium, there are teleprompters up, so I would not be surprised if we hear from him at some night. And just in terms of a quick mood check, George, you know they've got, again, these 2 war rooms here on the grounds of the White House where aides and campaign staffers are feverishly monitoring these returns coming in. We've been told that the president has been going between the residence and these rooms and touching base regularly with aides, so they're keeping him up to speed on that front. But the mood check here is they're feeling extremely confident by what they're seeing. Those North Carolina numbers they like very much, and that's giving them some more confidence in states like Arizona and Nevada as we watch those numbers rolling over the course of the evening.
Cecilia Vega, thanks very much. ABC News can now project the Democrats are going to retain the House of Representatives. Not a surprise here, Democrats went into the night with a healthy margin in the House, but we can now say the Democrats will keep that margin. Mary Bruce, that means likely that Nancy Pelosi, who I think had not spoken to President Trump in over a year, will return as Speaker.
That certainly does seem to be the case, George. We know that they have had this incredibly fraught relationship. There is still that fraught relationship continuing. I think specifically about the fight over COVID relief, which continues to be ongoing, even given the state of this pandemic. The two sides have not been able to come together and pass a COVID relief bill in these last recent weeks. It seems that certainly is not going to happen anytime soon. And yet Nancy Pelosi will continue. If Donald Trump continues to be president, Nancy Pelosi will continue to be his foe on Capitol Hill.
Okay, Mary Bruce, thanks very much. One more look at the board here. 95 electoral votes for Donald Trump right now, 93 for Joe Biden. That is because we've just added the state of Kansas for President Trump as well. And Terry, as we look at that 95 to 93 at 1044 on the East Coast, 270 winners. As I said, it looks like we're doing a little bit of a replay right now of 2016 with all those big battleground states still out there. America about as divided as ever. Terry Moran?
Yes, I'm sorry, George, I was looking at something else. But it does look that way, and it looks like it comes as a surprise to Democrats who thought they had the wind in their sails. But it turns out, I think one of the reasons the polls have been so battered is that Donald Trump represents a realignment. The pollsters don't understand a post-Donald Trump America, it seems to me. He wasn't a Republican, he was a nationalist. And that is something that this country hasn't seen. Other countries have. We've seen nationalists seize the loyalty of people who are looking for a different economy, a different culture than the Western cultures are trending, and they keep returning populist nationalists to power. Donald Trump is that person. I think it does come as a surprise, certainly to pollsters and to many Democrats as well. There's a lot of things, however this race comes out, for Democrats to do when it comes to the White
ABC News, straightforward.
Stand down.
Something the state GOP chair talked with me about earlier today. He said demographics are not ideology, demographics are not philosophy. He told me it is conservative ideals that have given Republicans a majority here in South Carolina, and that has helped Lindsey Graham in recent weeks, even though he has changed his stance on Supreme Court nominations in an election year by supporting the nomination of Amy Coney Barrett to the Supreme Court. He's been able to tout those conservative values, and that has helped him a lot. He struggled more this time around with women and independent voters, with women seeming evenly split between Harrison and Graham, and independent voters seeming to lean toward Harrison. But in the end, Graham pulled this one out. He will hold on to his seat, and that will certainly help Republicans as they remain optimistic in maintaining a majority in the Senate.
John Norman, thanks very much. John, Carl, I want to go to you. One of the reasons Jamie Harrison was able to raise so much money is that Lindsey Graham become such a target of progressives and liberals, gone from being the best friend of John McCain to basically Donald Trump's biggest supporter in the Senate.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, there was when Obama first got elected, I think he was Rahm Emanuel's best friend. I mean, he was the Republican you like to work with. He was, but he hitched himself. He hitched himself to Donald Trump thoroughly and totally. After calling Trump a racist, he attacked Trump in the most vicious terms during that Republican primary and turned right around. And Jamie Harrison was able to raise presidential level money in a Senate race, but not enough to win in South Carolina.
No. And Mary Bruce, Lindsey Graham was such a key player in the confirmation of both Brett Kavanaugh and Amy Coney Barrett to the Supreme Court.
He is the chairman of the powerful Judiciary Committee. Lindsey Graham just got a very big win in the confirmation of Amy Coney Barrett, but it was yet another example of the really just astounding 180 that Lindsey Graham has done in recent years. Of course, he came out in the end of Obama's term saying he would absolutely never consider a Supreme Court nominee this close to a presidential election. He went back on that promise, of course, leading the charge on the Hill to get Amy Coney Barrett confirmed. Lindsey Graham has really gone from being one of the president's opponents, one of his fiercest foes, to being his absolute top ally on the Hill. I can tell you, anyone who covers Capitol Hill knows in Washington, you want to know what the president is thinking, you go and find Lindsey Graham in the basement of the Capitol, and he is not hard to find because often it works the other way around too. If he wants the president to know what's happening on the Hill, he often comes and finds us to telegraph through the media. It has been just a remarkable run for Lindsey Graham, and I think it was one of the reasons, of course, why you saw Jamie Harrison raising so much money. Lindsey Graham was pummeled in this race by ads for his flip-flopping on his positions. And when it comes to the president, Jamie Harrison raising that astounding $57 million. That is presidential level money, but ultimately not enough. Lindsey Graham, it appears, will continue to be the president's top ally, closest friend on Capitol Hill.
Mary Bruce, thanks very much. Chris Christie, now the Senate battle is going to come down to North Carolina, Iowa, and Maine.
Yeah, and the Republicans have to win 2 of the 3 there. And I think they're in good shape to do it. I continue to hear from North Carolina Republican leadership. They're getting more and more confident as the night goes on that Tom Tillis is going to win a narrow race there and that the president will win the electoral votes. And in Iowa, spoke to a couple of Republican leaders there who think that Joni Ernst is going to be in good shape tonight.
We're going to keep an eye on it. We're going to be back in just a minute. Some of our stations are going to go to late local news right now, but our election coverage continues in just a moment.
Welcome to Disney Plus. Are you ready? And explore.
Oh my God! Mic is unmuted. I'm so sorry for the technical difficulties. I'm doing stuff really, really fast right now. So sorry for the technical difficulties. I have to change out cards for my cameras. Cards. Come on, sound. Card I have. I'm just going through these things like crazy. Sound volume.
Has maintained an edge in the polls, and if he were to win, this would be the first time that the state of Arizona would send 2 Democrats to the Senate since 1953. That's about 68 years. And I can tell you, George, again, this is that Senate seat that belonged to John McCain. His wife Cindy endorsed Joe Biden, but the voters we spoke with throughout Arizona here over the past couple days didn't care much about any of the endorsements.
Rick Johnston, thanks very much. Look at the City of Vega, 2 big issues in Arizona, COVID and its impact on the Latino community.
COVID impact on the Latino community, and of course we've been talking about this for so long now. This is a community that has been hit disproportionately hard. Some experts say that this is a community that has been devastated by COVID. George.
Okay, we now are going to hit House Speaker Nancy Pelosi is coming out to speak to the cameras. We're going to see it right now.
Thank you for joining us. I know that transportation is always challenging in this time of coronavirus, but thank you for joining us virtually here this evening so that I can praise you for retaining our House Democratic majority. Under your leadership, Madam Chair, we have held the House, and now after all the votes are counted, we'll see how much better we will do than that. We are in a situation where some of the states have just said we're not counting anymore until tomorrow morning, and of course the West Coast has not chimed in yet, so there's more to come. Our race this time was all about health care. This was Vote Your Health. We had that in the last election. Our For the People agenda was we're going to lower healthcare costs by lowering the cost of prescription drugs, preserving pre-existing conditions. It became the issue of the 2018 election under the leadership of the policy committee that Madam Chair was a co-chair of then, carrying that message into this election because it is of concern to the American people. It is amplified by the coronavirus. So our purpose in this race was to win so that we could protect the Affordable Care Act and that we could crush the virus, that we could stop the spread of it, that we could reward our workers who risk their lives to save lives and now might be losing their jobs, and that we can put money in the pockets of the American people. So I'm very, very proud of the fact that tonight, relatively early, we are able to say that we have held the House. It is something quite spectacular because
there's House Speaker Nancy Pelosi claiming victory in the House tonight. Democrats will retain control of the House of City of Vega. Sorry about that. We interrupted you. Finish your thought on Arizona.
Thank you, George. I appreciate that. We were talking about COVID and the impact on Latino communities, and as we've seen in polling heading into today, COVID is among the top issues of concern as Latinos head to the polls, as well as the economy and healthcare. But what we saw time and time again from President Trump in multiple visits to this state, and he made very many, and this kind of campaign, the Trump campaign particularly, was heavily focused on Arizona. This is a state they do want to win. they were focused, one of the messages that they kept hitting over and over again was immigration because of the state's location along the border there. And he talked about the wall repeatedly and repeated the mistruth that Mexico is paying for the wall. Mexico is not paying for the wall. American citizens are paying for the wall. And as we've seen in the polling heading into today, immigration is very far low on the list of issues that are important to Americans heading into Election Day. And when you talk to Republicans in Washington and on Capitol Hill specifically, they get very frustrated with the president's continual focus on this issue because it's not one that is necessarily a winning argument for their base heading into the election. They wanted to see him expand that conversation in states like Arizona to focus on COVID, to focus on the economy, but immigration was a message that he drilled in on time and time again.
Cecilia Vega, thanks very much. Lindsay Davis is a recurring theme of the night. This election defined in many ways by the pandemic.
Sure. Going into tonight, I think that one big question that loomed large was how were Americans going to respond to this increase in infections? Were they going to see that as a failure of the Trump administration and then vote for Joe Biden, or were they going to stick with the president despite the surge? 1,000 people died today of coronavirus, and yet when we're looking at the map, we really don't see that much has changed as far as the way people generally, we haven't again heard from the battleground states yet, but we haven't seen a lot of change from how people cast their votes in 2016. There really couldn't be much more daylight between these two candidates as far as how they've said.
I want to take that to Jen Ashton, because Jen, we've seen all through this campaign such different visions on how to handle the pandemic from Joe Biden and from Donald Trump, as the entire country, basically more than 42 states, are in the grip of this second wave.
Absolutely, George, and we heard Dr. Deborah Birx in an internal White House memo citing that we're going into the most dire period of the pandemic to date. She is expecting to see 100,000 cases a day in the next week, and we have seen different approaches. We've seen different approaches when it comes to testing. We've seen some missteps. We've seen a series of broken down communications and mistrust in the biggest and most powerful public health organizations we have, the CDC, the FDA, the World Health Organization. And to circle back to the state of Arizona, to pick up on what Cecilia and Lindsay have said, we have seen from the beginning of this pandemic, while it did not start the racial and ethnic disparities that exist in medicine and healthcare, it certainly put them under a spotlight. And when you look at the state of Arizona, one population, George, that we have not heard that much about, American Indians and Alaskan Natives, there is a disproportionate effect of this pandemic, this virus. They represent 4% of the Arizona population, 12% of deaths. This is a population, George, that 30 to 40% of residents do not have running water in their homes. So when you talk about battling this virus, it's not just about the vaccine and therapeutics. It's very widespread.
David Muir, what are we seeing in the exit polls about all this? We have national exit polls.
We do now, yeah. That's right, George. And just to pick up on Lindsay's point, that there could not be more daylight between President Trump and Joe Biden in how they put themselves forward as how they would deal with this pandemic moving forward. Joe Biden saying, I can't flip a switch and fix things, but we do have to address the virus before we can address the economy. But look at this. This is the first time we're going to be able to do this, 11 p.m. Eastern. So if containing COVID, the pandemic, was the way you voted today over rebuilding the economy, and look at this, 51% to 42% in the exit polling. When you break that down, Joe Biden, 80% to Donald Trump's 18%, if the most important issue to you was containing COVID-19. Now, if the most important issue was opening the country, getting the economy going again, it's almost the complete opposite, 76% with Donald Trump, 22% with Joe Biden. And among independents, we're seeing this tonight, the breakdown, Joe Biden leading among independents in the national exit polls, 55 to 40. And among women in the country, Joe Biden, 56% to Donald Trump's 43%. We look at men, 49% Donald Trump, 48% Joe Biden. And what we're seeing so far in these states with such close races is that not only is the country divided, but many of these key battleground states are divided right down the middle.
No question about that, Martha. This COVID something that came up consistently in all your travels across the country.
It sure did, George, but I have to say that I was surprised when I crossed the country, and it was almost like people are done with it. It was very blue state, red state. They were wearing masks in blue states. They were not wearing masks en masse in red states. So people would talk about it, but I think in so many ways there are so many bigger issues, especially to the Trump voters. I mean, we have to remember, they're voting for an incumbent now. In 2016, it was, we don't want to vote for a Washington guy. He's something new. He's a businessman. But they're voting on his record now. And that record is COVID. That record is the economy. That record is immigration and race relations. So they've made a decision, those Trump voters, that they like what Donald Trump has done in these last 4 years, including COVID. Trump voters I have talked to and said things about COVID. I mean, one voter in Texas who's a very strong supporter had a mask on. He said he only wears it when he goes into certain establishments so he can get into them. But his mask said, "This is dumb." And today he told me, Dr. Fauci, everything he says is wrong. So that message is resonating in those areas too. But you go through Ohio. I was especially surprised in Ohio. There were so many people out, not social distancing. And this is in Columbus, in a very crowded area. They had masks, but most of them were pulled down. But they were not social distancing, and they were just out. They just wanted to be out and try to forget about COVID.
Martha, thanks. Heidi Heitkamp, you certainly see that in the Dakotas.
Well, I think what's happening is people have bought into herd immunity. It's the only way to control it. It's not something that you're going to get over until you get through it. And they don't want to disrupt their lives. And so, sure, they know someone who's died, but, they were old or they were this. And what is really puzzling to me is that we are so willing to make old and disabled people kind of the victims here and then just accept it. And you're seeing that in these vote totals. You're seeing it in the behavior, especially in red states. They don't want to change their lives. They don't think that changing their lives will change the outcome of the coronavirus.
Heidi Heitkamp, thanks very much. Let's take another look at the state of Ohio right now. We know that 85% of the expected vote in the state of Ohio, and Donald Trump now appears to be pulling away 53 to 45 in that state. Chris Christie, that's what you were hearing from the state about an hour ago.
It was. That's what I was hearing from GOP leadership. They said that as this progressed in the evening, he was going to open up a more substantial lead. And George, I'm hearing the same thing in North Carolina, that both Tom Tillis is now leading by more than a point over Cal Cunningham, and the president is leading by just less than a point over Joe Biden in North Carolina. And that's been a steady progression through the evening to, chip away at that. And they feel very confident in North Carolina, again, that they're going to go that the way Ohio has gone here for Trump and for Tillis in the Senate.
Let's pull up another look at North Carolina right now. If we can pull up the North Carolina map, we've got 95% of the expected vote in North Carolina. Very close race right now. Only about 70,000 votes separating Donald Trump and Joe Biden. Tom, what can we look at on where the outstanding vote still is?
Okay, so let's look at the major counties here, because that's what Joe Biden needs to win if he wants to pull off an upset here. We're looking at Mecklenburg County, the biggest county. This is the Charlotte area. Right now, Joe Biden overperforming. He's 3 points higher from where Hillary Clinton was just 4 years ago. Donald Trump slightly down in Mecklenburg, but that's 95% of the vote in. Not a whole lot more votes going to come out of there. Wake County, the same story. Look, Joe Biden is doing well. He's improved in these cities around states like North Carolina. Let me look at one more area real quick right here. This is Guilford County. This was a county that the Trump campaign thought maybe they could improve on. It's pretty much the same as where it was 4 years ago. But George, as I look at this map, it's pretty much the same. Joe Biden is running up the score in the cities, but around the rural counties, even some of the and he's still winning. These counties down here on the border with South Carolina, Robson, this is one that we were taking a close look at. He's actually doing much better there. So in the rural areas, it looks like the Trump team has been able to drive out their voters.
Okay, Tom Yamas, thank you very much. We'll take another quick break. We have a long night ahead. We'll be right back.
We can make that happen, definitely.
This looks great. Getting through the morning meeting in one piece feels good.
360 Smart.
We've been talking about so far, every state that has been projected so far today is going exactly the same way as it went in 2016. As you look at all the data, and you've seen more data than probably anybody else in the country, has anything surprised you tonight?
I mean, I was in Miami-Dade County in Florida, and the big question is that indicative of a polling error in other parts of the country, or is it isolated to South Florida? The fact that Biden has won New Hampshire, for example, might make you say, well, actually it's part of Florida, but may not come elsewhere. The fact that Arizona looks okay for Biden. So look, it's going to be a long night. We're in a scenario now we're talking about this might take days to get resolved, but still, how much is that an isolated incident in Florida versus a national polling problem kind of like we saw in 2016?
Yeah, we still don't know how the popular vote is going to come. Of course, we expect to see millions and millions of votes coming in from the Pacific West Coast, especially California.
Yeah, I mean, Biden will probably win the popular vote, but that doesn't make you president. And so, you know, I mean, look, it was a little bit like 2016, but also like 2018, where Florida went very badly for Democrats. We had a good night at the end of the day. The fact that in different corners of the country, the fact that New Hampshire went for Biden and Arizona looks okay for Biden would give Democrats quite a bit of hope, I would think. But, you know, if they lose Pennsylvania, then we probably have a second term for Trump. So it's going to take a long time to know what happens in Pennsylvania, what happens in Wisconsin, what happens in Michigan. We'll know more about Arizona by 2 or 3 in the morning tonight, but it's going to be a while here.
Well, we should just emphasize that. We said it at the beginning of the night. We'll say it again right now. That we have to have patience. We have to wait until all the votes are counted. We know it's going to take some time to count the votes in Pennsylvania and Michigan and Wisconsin. It is looking increasingly clear that we are not going to know the next president of the United States will be tonight. And we're just going to have to be patient as we go through this process in the coming hours and perhaps the coming days. Let's take another look at the state of Georgia right now. 67% of the expected vote is in, and Tom Donald Trump appears to have a fairly healthy lead right now.
We're talking about 340,000 votes, and I want to show you one data point right now because this is interesting. Donald Trump actually winning in the early vote in the state of Georgia. So we talked about the spread, almost 400,000 votes. Donald Trump's holding what he needs to hold. The swing counties he took from the Democrats 4 years ago, he's winning again. Places like Peach County. We want to look at Peach County because, as you'd imagine, they got peaches there. But it also has a good breakdown in the state. They have 50% white, 44% African American. It's a place that Donald Trump won 4 years ago, and he's holding on to the same lead. But this was a county that Barack Obama also won. The big question, George, and this is maybe for other people on the panel, but the big question is, can they find those 300,000 votes in this area? That's what's going to need to happen, because in the rural areas, in northern Georgia, southern Georgia, the Piedmont area, Donald Trump is winning. His people are turning out. Are those 300,000 votes still there? We're going to have to wait and see. If we go into some of these counties, like DeKalb, there's only 24% of the vote in. And Joe Biden, he's doing better, but the question is he doing well enough to drive out all those numbers and drive them in a big way? I don't know if 3 or 4 percentage points is going to do that. He's going to have to come up much higher.
Okay, Tom, thanks, Rich. We should also say we now know that in the Senate race, one of the Senate races in Georgia, Reverend Raphael Warnock, the pastor of Ebenezer Baptist Church, will be in a runoff with the Senator Kelly Loeffler right now, Republican Senator. If that Simpson, that could be quite a barn burner on January 5th.
We are ready to go to battle for that seat, and we're super excited about the fact that Raphael, who's a newcomer, has been able to do so well against two pretty well-known Republicans in the state. And so we predicted that this would go to a runoff. Our folks are ready. We hope to take that seat.
And a very good possibility there'll be a second runoff on the same day.
Exactly.
Georgia. Let's pull up now Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania. Of course, those are those key blue-tier states. Blue wall for the Democrats was taken away by Donald Trump in 2016. Right now, 44% of the expected vote in Michigan, Donald Trump is ahead. 52% in Wisconsin, Donald Trump is ahead. 45% in Pennsylvania, Donald Trump is ahead. John Carter, we're going to repeat this again. Right now, this is not necessarily unexpected.
Yeah, this is not unexpected. Remember, the mail-in vote, which we expect to be overwhelmingly Democratic, didn't even start counting. The process didn't start counting until today. So I fully expect that Biden's numbers will increase as it goes on, and not just tonight, but over the coming days. I mean, in Pennsylvania, they have told us that Friday is the very earliest. In fact, Pennsylvania will still accept absentee votes that come in as long as they were postmarked by today until Friday. So this is going to take some time. But George, looking into some of the details here, particularly in Michigan, I see signs that should be concerning to the Democrats. I see Donald Trump performing in these early returns quite well in places like Macomb County, which he won last time. He seems to be potentially putting up numbers bigger than he did 4 years ago. And also in Kent County, Grand Rapids, which is where he held his very last rally of this campaign.
Juju Cheng is in Michigan. Juju, tell us more about what you're hearing about how the counting is going, how long it's going to take.
Well, George, it will definitely be a marathon nail-biter here, but at least in Michigan, not as marathon as projected. The Secretary of State Benson said a short time ago in a press conference that she believes it will be fully tabulated within 24 hours. Now, they originally said they wouldn't be done until Friday, but a lot of that has to do with the fact that yesterday, unlike the other upper Midwestern states, they had 10 hours to process. They had an army of volunteers come in, hand open envelopes, check signatures, so that at 7 a.m. this morning, with a double number of speed counting machines, they were able to get to work, and they believe they're going to work much faster. That said, they are also seeing record turnout in Detroit. I spoke earlier to the NAACP's Reverend Anthony, and he said that they had 100 lawyers fanned out looking for voter intimidation, and what they ended up doing was spending a lot of time getting out the vote, bringing souls to the polls, as the Reverend told me. But at the same time, Republicans are also incredibly enthusiastic about their ground game. The party chair, Laura Cox, told me that they had 9 million voter contacts during the season, that every time they were out canvassing, they never saw any Democrats, and they cannot tell you enough about the enthusiasm that they see and they viscerally feel every time there are these giant rallies, so many of which took place in the battleground state of Michigan. And George, don't get me started on the lawn signs, but you see them all over. You know you're in a battleground in these suburbs when there's a Biden sign on one side, the Trump signs on the other. I went to a Trump volunteer meeting, a packed room. The organizer said, how many of you have had your lawn sign stolen or vandalized? And almost the entire room's hand went up. It says something about just how tense the battleground is here out in the suburbs.
It sure does. I want to go to Mary Bruce right now. Mary, you picked up any concern in the Biden, kept picking up what John Carl was saying about the way the votes are coming in Michigan and how they're coming in?
The read from inside the Biden campaign right now is urging caution and patience. They say, look, they are feeling fine, and that is because this was expected. They knew that many of these key states, especially the blue wall states, were going to take some time. That said, there has been a bit of a shift in tone. Given the real enthusiasm, the real confidence we were hearing from members of the Biden team heading into tonight, now you hear more the words hopeful, optimistic. They were really bullish earlier in the night. Now not so much of that, but George, I have to tell you, behind me, they've started to bring in the cars here to this drive-in rally. If I'm really trying to pick the tea leaves here, not sure what that means about whether we may or may not see Joe Biden later tonight. Of course, he sort of changed his tune. They're saying he may actually not speak until tomorrow.
But perhaps they will be ready for him to speak. We're going to keep an eye on that. And of course, we're going to be here as long as the votes are being counted tonight. We're going to take another quick break right now. Election 2020 coverage continues right now. Joe Biden has 187 electoral votes. Donald Trump 114 electoral votes. It's a close one.
Welcome to Disney Plus. Are you ready?
New York City. Here again, George Stephanopoulos.
And we're back here at ABC News Election Headquarters in New York, 11:30 here in the East. And as we said, it's going to be a long night, a lot more counting ahead. It could spread out over the next several days. And so that makes me want to bring back our legal team, our ballot watch team. We're going to bring in Kate Shaw and Dan Abrams right now. And Kate, we just talked about Pennsylvania. We've had this Supreme Court ruling on how and whether and when ballots can be counted in Pennsylvania. It could prolong this process. Could be more challenges ahead.
That's right. So actually, the Supreme Court has now twice had a chance to weigh in on this question of whether ballots that arrive between today and Friday can be counted under Pennsylvania law. Both times the court turned back challenges brought by Pennsylvania Republicans that would have cut off, the return date today on election day itself. So right now, those ballots are going to be counted, but they're being segregated because the Supreme Court actually left wide open the possibility that it might take another look at this case after the election. And we don't know yet, and it's important, I think, to note that Justice Amy Coney Barrett is now in place, and there's a question about whether she might participate, which would, of course, give additional vote when the court comes to considering this late arriving ballots.
Yeah, I want to bring that to Dan Abrams as well, because we all remember 2000 Florida. If it's close, that adds another layer of complication as well. You have recounts and have to have the ballots counted again. So first you have the challenges to the existing ballots and then the possibilities in a close race of recounts, and the court's getting involved in that.
Right. We've said in our room here, the legal room, we're only relevant if this thing is close. This thing is now close. And so as a result, the lawyers are all on speed dial. There's no question that there are going to be some form of legal challenges. We don't know exactly how real they will be, how significant, but Pennsylvania could become critical here. And as you point out, not just with regard to the 3 days of ballot counting, because there may not be that many votes in those 3 days. I think you could argue that the more critical question is going to be exactly how they're counting the variety of votes, the signatures matching, etc. And I think that those could be the critical questions here, even more than that 3-day window.
Okay, and Terry Moran, we saw how that played out in Florida in 2000.
We did, and one of the big questions here is how much will this conservative supermajority that is now in the Supreme Court defer to state Supreme Courts that find under state constitutions that these ballots should be counted, or will they reach into those states and federalize the question and decide it for themselves?
Okay, many questions ahead. We'll see if we get to them. We're going to take another break, and we'll be right back.
Wednesday night, get ready for a con so big, so outrageous, never seen anything like it before. Meet the prince, pretending to be part of one of the world's richest royal families. Living large, but
Holy cow, who is this person?
He stole approximately $8.1 million.
where was all this money coming from? Buckle up.
Just the tip of the iceberg.
I'm Whoopi Goldberg. This voters in New York City. Here again, George Stephanopoulos.
And we are back. Let's take a look at the electoral map right now. So far, Joe Biden has won 14 states, 187 electoral votes. Donald Trump has won 17 states, 114 electoral votes. So far, at least, according to ABC News, every state that Hillary Clinton won in 2016 has been won by Joe Biden. In 2020, same goes Donald Trump, repeating his wins in the red states. The big battleground states still out there right now. Let's take a look at some of them, starting with the state of Florida. And there, with 94% of the vote in, Donald Trump has a relatively healthy lead, Tom Yamas.
Yeah, he does, George. And I think when we look at Florida at this hour, it's really just some. And I'll walk you through it. When we talk about the vote difference right now, plus 5 million, so huge turnout in Florida. We have to acknowledge that. We're talking about a 400,000 voter gap, right? I told you 4 years ago, Hillary Clinton comes out of Miami-Dade County with a 300,000 plus advantage. What happened tonight? Let's go to Miami-Dade County and look at this, George. We're talking about less than 100,000 difference right there. This entire state, you could bank it on this one county right here. Republicans were able to make inroads with voters there. Donald Trump, even though he lost, he actually won.
Okay, David, you're always seeing the exit polls.
A couple of the really key things, George. Let's laser in on the Latino vote in Florida. As you can see, look at this. Joe Biden got 52% of the Latino vote to 47% for Donald Trump. If that number holds and bears out at the end of the night, that's a significant number for Donald Trump, not only with Cuban Americans, but perhaps gaining on some of the numbers we saw 4 years ago with the Latino vote. And look at this. We asked seniors, particularly in the corridor and other parts of Florida, whether or not they've been affected by the pandemic. They were concerned when they would be able to hug their grandchildren, as Lindsay Davis talked about earlier in the evening. 52% of seniors in Florida, according to the exit polls tonight, supported Donald Trump to 47% for Joe Biden.
Okay, let's take a look now at the state of Arizona. Pull it up right there. Still 75% of the expected vote in, 54-45 right there for Joe Biden. The big lead there, we say Mark Kelly also has a lead there. Not much new coming in the count yet, Tom. We still expect more tonight.
Yeah, not yet, but one more data point we haven't talked about yet. It's a county that's sandwiched in between Maricopa and Tucson, right? Pinal County right here. This was a county that swung the biggest for Trump 4 years ago, was where he was most popular. And look at his numbers down. He's down 7 points right there. In a very tight race, in a very tight election, you can't be down 7 points anywhere. It's just one sign. But the big headline, George, so far coming in, 77% of the vote in, and Joe Biden is up in a very big way in Maricopa County. This is Phoenix, this is Scottsdale, Mesa area. He's doing very well right there. This is the surprise of the night so far in Maricopa County. Look, Donald Trump had underperformed from Mitt Romney. Democrats thought Republicans were vulnerable there. They went in, and right now they're on top.
Okay, let me bring in Nate Silver back again as we pull up and look at states, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania again. Those states still coming in. Let's talk about the possible paths now for Biden and Trump. Very similar to what we saw, first of all, in 2016.
Yeah, so if we can speculate a bit, so what happens if Donald Trump wins Florida, wins Ohio, wins North Carolina, but then Biden wins Arizona? We actually think that's a decent map for Joe Biden. He's about an 85% favor. There is also a chance of electoral college tie. But Trump, if he loses Arizona, he could actually win Pennsylvania and then get to 269 or 268. That would not be enough. It could come down to the second congressional district in Omaha, Nebraska, or the one in upstate Maine. So if Arizona goes Biden, that really reverses not all the bad news Democrats got earlier in the evening, but makes Trump an underdog again.
Well, and then, let's pick up what John Carl was saying about Michigan. Once again, this is pure speculation, but we're just trying to figure out what different maps might look like. If the Democrats win Arizona, Joe Biden holds Pennsylvania, but Donald Trump gets Michigan, they have only 16 electoral votes to Pennsylvania's 20.
Pennsylvania is bigger. 20 votes in Pennsylvania or 16 in Michigan and Wisconsin, that can make a difference some of the time, right? There's a lot we don't know. Nevada could be in play, probably not. Georgia, I think, is not going to be called tonight. So there are other scenarios, but we are looking at a lot of photo finishes, and then a photo finish, Arizona becomes a pretty important state.
You mentioned Nevada, and I wonder, Tom, if we can pull, I'm talking to the control room right now, can we pull up Nevada and take a look at what we're seeing in the state of Nevada right now? They're going to take time because they have all the early vote, and we just don't have anything coming in on that yet. So let's go back to Wisconsin. Deb Roberts, I'll go to you in Wisconsin right now. What are you hearing about the possibility of when the count will be continued there and when it will be finished?
George, I got to tell you, there's good news, bad news. The good news is it seems to be going very well. All of those absentee mail-in ballots, about 2 million of them, they're being processed very well. The Wisconsin Election Commission head, Megan Wolf, said that they're processing very well. But then she said she probably will give another news conference at 11:30 in the morning, so I'll probably be here right on time for Good Morning America. Now, the one thing that is sort of interesting, and you've talked a lot about this tonight, is those ballots probably will reflect a very tight race. Wisconsinites seem to just have this love-hate or like-hate relationship with the president. On the one hand, they just don't like him. More than 50% think that he's not doing a good job. 56% don't like how he's handling the pandemic. I talked to a guy in line today, and he said he would have swum through a lake of alligators to get there to vote because he wanted to support Biden, and he just didn't like where the country's going. But then I spoke with another voter who said, I'm worried about health care, and this is in a state that is dealing with the COVID virus. But then he said, I think I'm going to support the president, or I just supported the president. So Wisconsinites are very mixed here, and I think it's going to be a long night, a long morning. And you know, the polls show that Biden is up, but it's going to be very, very tight here. I think Wisconsinites just don't show what they think. The president's been here 6 times. Joe Biden came 3 times. He was here in Kenosha last night. He projects strength, and they seem to like that in spite of the fact that they don't like him.
Deb Roberts, thanks. Let me David Pilgrim in Pennsylvania for the same question. What are you hearing about how the count is going? How long it's likely to take?
Well, sort of like what Deb just said. Some good news and some bad news. They say that the counting is going smoothly. Originally, they thought that we would have the majority of those mail-in ballots counted by Friday, but we just heard a little bit earlier tonight from the Philadelphia City Commissioners, and they were saying that they originally thought that they were going to be able to do about 32,000 ballots an hour. That's just not happening. They're saying right now they're doing about 10,000 per hour. They've done about 75,000 votes, mail-in ballots so far tonight. They've estimated they have about 350,000 to count. We're supposed to hear from them again at about midnight to give us an update. That's the next kind of ballot drop number that we're expecting to hear from them. But here's the thing, it's just going to take a long time. I've heard you say this tonight repeatedly, George. People are just going to have to be patient. This is a slow process. Here in Pennsylvania, I mean, there's like 2.5 million mail-in ballots that came in. This is a state that's never done early voting for all voters that wanted to take advantage of it. This is a first-time process, and it's going to take some time. The governor spoke earlier tonight asking everyone to just have their patience. They are doing the best that they can. People are working around the clock, as we're seeing here in Philadelphia, but it is going to take time. They want to make sure this count is accurate, George.
Which is the most important thing for them to do right now. Ava Pilgrim, thanks very much. We can project 2 more states right now. State of New Mexico is going to go to Joe Biden. State of New Mexico, and it's 5 electoral votes. Hillary Clinton won by 8 points in 2016. Joe Biden will win it tonight. And the state of Idaho, it's 4 electoral votes. No surprise, they're going to go to Donald Trump. He won the state by 32 points in 2016. Right under the table right now. Sarah Fagan, let me start with you. We're coming up on midnight now on the East Coast. Is the night going as you expected? What's the surprise? What should we be looking for ahead?
I think the night's going better than I expected.
For Republicans?
For Republicans, yeah. I mean, I was in the camp where I thought Joe Biden was going to win this, and it is far from clear that he's going to win this election. And the president seems to be doing much better in the upper Midwest. Now, again, we don't know exactly what vote is in. It may be heavily election day vote, but clearly in some of those counties, the president is overperforming, and even overperforming what he did in 2016. So I think this is going to be a nail biter.
I think the way I look at it is every state to date has performed like they did, not changing. There wasn't really a move in the sense that some people thought there was this tailwind coming, except for Arizona. And the only state that's flipped so far is Arizona.
It hasn't flipped yet.
It hasn't flipped yet, but
it's going to tighten.
It's going to tighten, but I'm going to go out on a limb then, given it's midnight, it's way past my bedtime, and say that those are numbers that are hard at this point for the president to break. That said, we have big numbers in Atlanta and Metro Atlanta, big numbers in the metro areas of the upper Midwest that are out. It's going to come down to those 4 states to make the determination, and we're going to be here every night Friday, so I look forward to seeing you every night. So we're going to be here right through, and I'm going to sit next to you, so we're going to be there. But it's going to be a while here, and I think what the problem is, what was your baseline is going to determine your mood. And if you thought this was going to be a big tailwind, oh boy, that was disappointing, as Nate said. The truth is, it hasn't been. It's actually, the states are doing exactly what they did.
It's also looking very good for Republicans to control the Senate. Joni Ernst is ahead, Tom Tillis is ahead, it's not done in North Carolina. The Georgia senators are ahead. If you go to a runoff, especially, if Biden does pull this off, you're likely to keep control of the United States Senate. People like a split power, and we will see at least one runoff in Georgia.
You don't want split power.
No, we don't. We would take the whole darn thing, of course. I think a couple of big picture things I'm saying is that the strategy to flip Republicans to Democrat didn't pan out. And so now we're all hoping that enough Democrats came out, particularly in urban centers and some suburban areas, to really carry the day. And I think that was the big surprise aha, I think, for a lot of us who were expecting, particularly with what happened at the convention and Lincoln Project, that all these Republicans were going to flip. But we're seeing Donald Trump win in big margins where he won before. So are there enough Democrats, particularly in these areas where we're seeing Joe Biden actually overperform Hillary Clinton in 2016? Will that be enough to carry the day?
Donald Trump's overperforming Donald Trump. And that's part of the problem for Democrats right now. And for Rob to say the evening's gone about as expected, something I was hearing about 6 hours ago. Okay, so what we're seeing is that the president is enormously competitive in Wisconsin, where he was not supposed to be competitive according to the polls. He's competitive in Michigan, where he was not supposed to be competitive according to the polls. And he's winning in Florida and winning in North Carolina. And so, I think it's going to come down to Pennsylvania. At the end of the day, I think if the president wins Pennsylvania, he's going to be reelected. And if he doesn't, he won't.
Matt Dowd.
Well, I'm going to go along with Ron on this one, because look at every single state and look at the polls. Really, if you fundamentally look at the polls, they've basically been in alignment, give or take a point or two, been in alignment with what we saw. We will soon find out a divergence from that. And my guess is the first divergence from this is Arizona. And once Arizona diverges, I've looked at the data, it's almost impossible for Donald Trump to come back from where he's behind with what's left in there. And the other thing to look at is Michigan. Michigan is not as close as it looks right now. If you look at all of the numbers, all of those numbers that are in are almost all election day numbers. It's almost no absentee, which the Democrats were supposed to overperform in. And I still think North Carolina, there's a lot left to count, and there's a lot of mail left to count in North Carolina. So that race, I don't think, is over yet. But the first state that we see that switches is likely to be from Donald Trump to Joe Biden. And that's the most significant thing we're waiting on.
Heidi Heitkamp.
I totally agree with Rob and with Matt, but I think the story that we haven't talked about tonight, which is the popular vote. How much is Biden going to win the popular vote and still see this enormous challenge in the Electoral College? And that's going to reignite all of that dialogue again. If this is a 5-point win in the popular vote, I think that there's going to be a lot of challenges in this country holding the country together.
7 out of 8 the last elections won by Democrats in the popular vote. John Carter, you get the last word here.
Well, I think there are dangers out there for Joe Biden in Pennsylvania by looking in Ohio. Tom, if you can pick up 2 counties that border Pennsylvania in Ohio, Trumbull and Mahoning, in both these counties, Donald Trump seriously outperformed what he did 4 years ago. Now that's in Ohio. Ohio's one state, but right on the other side, key counties in Pennsylvania.
We're going to be watching it all day, all night, perhaps all week long. We'll be right back.
This is what being live is all about. This is ABC News Live. 24/7 streaming news source, ABC News. Imagine breaking news live first as they have it streaming live, non-stop, straight to you. Imagine instant, incredible access to the most compelling live video.
Tomorrow or beyond before we do. Tell me everything you know from the key states that are still out there. Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Georgia, North Carolina, about where the vote is, how long it's going to take.
Yeah, George, it's overwhelmingly likely that we're well into overtime in those states, particularly Georgia, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania. We know that there's a lot of outstanding vote. In Georgia, it's primarily the urban counties. We've had some counting issues there, and we know that at some point they're going to basically have to resume tomorrow. And in Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania, election officials have been telling us for weeks that they're not going to be ready to have a complete vote count. In Wisconsin, we're expecting more information overnight. In Pennsylvania, it's going to be several days. I think it is now fair to assume that we're into an overtime scenario with several states on the line. I think North Carolina may be a little bit different, but the other four, they're all big states, George, are now very likely to head into tomorrow or beyond.
And we should also explain, it generally takes more time, not always, but it generally takes more time to check, verify, count a mail ballot than it does someone made at the ballot box.
Exactly. You have to go one by one, and it's one of the ironies of this surge in early voting that may actually force election officials to take a lot longer on the back end. They've been preparing for this for weeks. They have been warning about this possibility, and it is now a probability, or even more than that we're talking about having to wait a while to get this complete and accurate count. We know that at least on the Democratic side, they're starting to talk about lawyers setting up an infrastructure to fight in the courts if necessary. But for now, we're going to wait for quite a while on the vote count. And keep in mind that in those three states, those upper Midwestern states, we're still looking at primarily day of vote, election day vote, which we know from all the polling and all the indications that heavily favors Donald Trump. So the Biden campaign is hoping to close that.
And again, you can't say this enough. I mean, we're also looking deep into where the vote is coming from, but both campaigns always expected the day of vote in those three states to favor Donald Trump.
Precisely. We knew that Joe Biden built up a lead in just about every state with any kind of early vote. Going into election day, the question was, can Donald Trump overcome that? And he has overperformed his margins in a bunch of states, and he has just about hit the expectations. There's a range of states where it's almost uncanny, where talking to Democrats and Republicans, well, they knew there were numbers that Donald Trump had to hit to be competitive, and he's there almost to a 1/10 of a percentage point.
Dan Abrams, thank you, Rick. Dan Abrams, we talked about this moments ago. You guys are getting more relevant by the minute. Just walk people through what to expect in the coming hours and days.
Well, look, I don't think anything in the coming hours apart from preparation, right? I think that what you're going to see in the next few hours is the legal teams gathering and sort of playing it out. as to all the various possibilities that could occur. What happens if there's a fight in Pennsylvania? What happens if there's a fight in Michigan? What are the laws in Wisconsin? What are the recount laws? I mean, that's the first place we got to be looking at right now, which is the automatic recounts. For example, in the state of Pennsylvania, if it's within half a point, there's an automatic recount that will take place in the state. Those are going to be the first round of sort of legal issues. Round two is going to be, okay, now there's been a recount. Let's get down to the very specifics of ballot by ballot. But we're not there yet. So there's no question the lawyers are on hold. The lawyers are preparing. The lawyers are learning the laws, particularly in those 3 states. I'm sure they already know them, but they're going to be brushing up on the laws in those 3 states as they prepare for what could be litigation, getting down to the point of ballot by ballot in some of these states.
That's the point I wanted to bring to Kate Shaw. Remember back in 2000, it was Justice Scalia on his own who actually stopped the counting in the state of Florida.
That's right, and obviously that's a nightmare scenario, that it all comes down to one state, and there's the possibility of the Supreme Court intervening in a state process. Right? Remember, elections are typically won at the state and local level, right? That is the sort of design of our system. So it was, I mean, unusual doesn't even begin to counter it for the Supreme Court to essentially halt the state process in Bush versus Gore, and then ultimately, essentially, to hand the victory by, stopping continuing counting to George W. Bush. So I don't think anyone, I think probably most John Roberts, the Chief Justice, wants to see a replay of that this time.
Kate Shaw, thanks very much. We're going to take another break. Some station to get this down from local news. For the rest of the country, our coverage continues.
from ABC News election headquarters in New York City, here again, George Stephanopoulos.
It is midnight here in the East, and we are here at ABC News election headquarters in a very tight race for president right now. Let's take a look at the map. Joe Biden has won 15 states, 192 electoral votes. Donald Trump has won 18 states, 118 electoral votes so far tonight. Every state that Joe Biden won was won by Hillary Clinton back in 2016. Tonight he won in 2016 as well. Let's take a look at the state of Virginia right now. Let's pull that up. Hillary Clinton won it 4 years ago. Right now, with 75% of the vote, of the expected vote in, Joe Biden is leading. He's behind Donald Trump there. Actually, let me skip ahead to Texas. Let's say Virginia for a second. 75% of the expected vote is in 52 to 46. Joe Biden over Donald Trump. Time Yanis.
Yeah, okay, so George, right now, Virginia, we take a look at the map, and it looks a lot like 2016 looked like, right? Joe Biden, the Democrat, on top. What finally happened here? Because at the beginning of the night, remember, I was telling you about the suburbs around D.C. where a quarter of the vote's going to come in. Well, the vote is now in. You can see Joe Biden is up with big numbers, 76.7, overperforming in counties like Fairfax. Let's take a look at Alexandria, Prince William County, 63%. So he's winning where he needs to be. That vote has come in, and also other areas that were kind of tight, places like Virginia Beach. Donald Trump on top there right now, which is a good sign for the president because it was razor thin just before that. With the Chesapeake, this was a swing county before. Now it's swung back to Democrats. Look, Virginia wasn't a big story. People thought it was enough for the Democrats. The votes come in outside of D.C. It's going for Joe Biden.
Right now it is. Let's pull up Texas now. Let's pull up the state of Texas. Stay at the board right now. Let's see how much of the vote is coming in. 88% of the expected vote is in right now, and Donald Trump's starting to pull away.
Yeah, he is, George. And something really interesting about Texas, John Carl and I were just talking about this. If you look at some of the big counties like Harris County, Houston, so Joe Biden in Houston, the biggest city, he's basically doing what Democrats did 4 years ago. When he got back on time.
We got to do that because we are now projecting that Donald Trump will win the state of Ohio. Donald Trump will win the state of Ohio tonight. It's 18 electoral votes, excuse me. Go to Donald Trump. He won it 4 years ago. He will win it again tonight. Chris Christie, I guess that's not a surprise, but still an important win.
Really important because there was no way for the president to win without Ohio. And as we know, no Republican president has ever been elected without Ohio. So, you know, we talk about a must-win state. When you get that much history behind it, it's a must-win state. So he pulled it off. It took a little longer than we all thought, but he pulled that one off, and it allows him to continue in the game.
The question that stems from now is, what is that going to tell us about what happens in Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania?
Well, you just don't know. Let's remember that Ohio was the one state in the area that didn't flip in 18. So I don't want to cast aspersions about what might happen. So Ohio was red for Trump, and then it was red again. We lost statewide in Ohio for a lot of reasons. We didn't win any of the congressional races that we were fighting in 18. But Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania all flipped presumably in the midterm. So I still hold out hope for those other three states, even though unfortunately my home state, Ohio, did not come through today.
Rahm Emanuel, Donald Trump is getting out his vote.
Yeah, I mean, so we can start to extrapolate certain information, and that is that Donald Trump is in the race of Donald Trump versus Donald Trump's beating 2016 Donald Trump. And while the numbers, and we keep showing how Biden is beating Hillary, but the total vote is not showing up at the right now in areas that Democrats need. So in DeKalb County is still out in Georgia and other areas. What is your expectation for that vote? And so far, well, he may be winning 65, 35, etc. The totality of the vote is not matching the totality of Trump's vote in Trump's area, in areas, except for, I do want to keep coming back to, we have had a state flip. Only one state is flipped, and it's flipped towards Biden. And so we got to keep that in mind at this area.
You keep saying that. I have to keep reminding our viewers, we have not yet projected Arizona.
That is true. We have not projected it, but if you look at the math, it's hard to see how that is fair. But that is the only state that is so far, and it's up by 9.5 points.
What are you learning from Ohio?
From Ohio, I mean, obviously the president won by the same margin tonight as he did in 2016. And when you look, to a point John Carl made, which is you look at Western Ohio, now that is a good sign for Donald Trump in Pennsylvania. I'm hearing on the ground in Pennsylvania, African-American turnout down in Philadelphia, and that fracking issue did in fact hurt Joe Biden in Pennsylvania, that you see big turnout in those areas for Donald Trump.
And what are you seeing, David, in the exit polls from Ohio?
A lot of really interesting things coming in on Ohio. First, let's take a look at the suburban vote in Ohio. 52% of it went to Donald Trump, and then you do the breakdown, which really illustrates the gender gap, but it's huge. With women, Joe Biden won with women in the suburbs of Ohio, 53 to 47. But look at men. The gap is huge. 59% with Donald Trump, 39% exit polls for Joe Biden. Handling the economy, 56% with Donald Trump, well over 42% for Joe Biden. Job performance, 54% approve of the job performance from President Trump. Containing COVID, rebuild the economy almost evenly split. But look at the split. Look at this. The opinion of Donald Trump, 51% unfavorable, but even higher for Joe Biden, 52%. This was really interesting, George. First-time voters, Donald Trump wins them, 54% to Joe Biden. It's what you said earlier, George. Donald Trump is getting out his voters. And on independents, Joe Biden with an edge, but certainly not enough to make the room for leaders.
Try right there. That means that we have another state to protect, and it is the state of Virginia. It is going to Joe Biden. It's 13 electoral votes. Again, not a surprise, but now it's been officially projected by ABC News. Joe Biden will win the state of Virginia. The blue states are filling in blue. The red states are filling in red right now. Let's go to the state of Wisconsin. Take a look at that. This is one of the states that Joe Biden will have to flip if he wants to be the next president of the United States. 64% of the expected vote is in right now. Donald Trump is in the lead, Tom.
Okay, so I'd like to acknowledge the gentleman from New Jersey on this one. About half an hour ago, you said the Trump campaign was feeling good about Wisconsin, and they should be. We still only have 64% of the vote in, but George, there were 23 counties that swung for President Trump 4 years ago. I did some quick math. I was counting them. He's up in almost 20 of those pivot counties. So let's look at Milwaukee, because this is where most of the votes are going to come from right now. Only 36% in. Look at Joe Biden's numbers, though. Underperforming from 4 years ago. He's got to get that number up. Let me bring this up over here, because we're talking about the WOW counties. These are the suburb counties around Milwaukee. And they're called WOW because of their initials. First, Ozaki here. Donald Trump at 53%. We look at what he did 4 years ago. He's slightly under. Let's go over here to Walker.